Hello, everyone. My name's Steve Jordans. I'm a professor of psychology at U of Toronto and also one of the co-founders of peerScholar. And I have the pleasure of talking to you today about group member evaluations. And specifically, I'm now aware that you guys used WebPA to do those group member evaluations in the past, and you really want peerScholar to be able to do what WebPA did. So I want to show you that process, how it works within peerScholar, and then talk specifically about the WebPA piece, because as I'll show you, it's not quite in place yet. It will be in a very short period of time, days. And so I'll show you, where to look, where to find it, and how it'll all work. Okay, so let's start here. I'm just going into a course shell. So my course here would be research ethics, but whatever your course is, if you're in this shell, you can get to the place I'm going to go by saying plus activity. But also, when you first create a peerScholar link in your learning management system and click into peerScholar, it will sort of automatically do what happens when I press this, which is this. Okay, it will bring up this. So this is often one of the first things you see when you click into a peerScholar activity. And it's really asking you what sort of activity you wish. And we've got, of course, a number, but we're going to focus here on this teamwork and group work spot here at the bottom. I'm going to click on that right now and then scroll down, and you'll see there's sort of three subcategories in here. And I'm going to come back to those first two, but let me just explain in a general sense. We're going to focus on the group member evaluation. So the group member evaluation is exactly what I described to you earlier. You had a bunch of students do some project together as a team, and now you would like them to assess each other's contributions to that team project. So within peerScholar, you can use that as a tool in and of itself. And that's what I'll show you first. Or you can use it as something that's integrated into that more general peerScholar process. That's what these two are about. So I'm going to come back to these two. I'm going to focus first on group member evaluation as a standalone thing. And so the idea here is your students have done a project, but they haven't used peerScholar to do it. They've done a teamwork project, but they just did it in maybe some more traditional setting or whatever. They did not use peerScholar to do it. But now that that project is done, you want them to evaluate each other's contributions. And so if I click into this and I just give it a name, I'm going to give it a name just for fun, and create that activity. Now you're going to see you have these three steps that we have to go through. Step one is about actually designing, what do you want them to answer? And how do you want it to kind of lay out? So this will make sense as I just walk through the options with you. So the first question that you have to answer here is, hey, do you want students to see the ratings that other students gave them? So once the ratings part is done, do you want students to be able to see their assessments? And so if you don't, you can uncheck that and it's gone. But if you do, if you want them to see what their teammates thought of their contributions, you click that on, and then you can decide whether you want the comments of the peers to be shown anonymously, which is the default, or not. There may be cases where you don't, where you want them to actually see which teammate said what, maybe to set up subsequent discussions or something like that. Default is to do that anonymously. And then you just decide, hey, do you want, if I'm in a group with a bunch of other people, do you want me to assess all of those other people? That's the normal. That's what you'd normally do. But if it was a large team and you just wanted them to assess some subset of that larger team, you could have them just, whatever. You could choose a subset of people for them to assess. Okay, so this is just kind of setting that part up. Then the next critical step is, okay, I'm a student, I'm assessing my teammates. What do you want me to talk about? What's the information you want me to give? And so this can come in a number of forms. You could just say, let's say you actually wanted them to sort of grade the contribution, like out of a 10. So you could say something like, if you were grading the contribution of this team member, what grade would you give out of 10, let's say? And then you can set this to go from 0 to 10. You can decide if you want just whole numbers or if you want to allow them to do fractions. And then you say save. And so that's one of the things they're going to be asked. Now, you can, for some of you, that might be all you want. And I think with WebPA, that might have been the sort of idea. There was just one sort of rating. But I also want you to know that you have the option to go richer, and you may want to go richer. So, for example, here's what I often do. I pick the comment one, and I say, please give a brief description of what components, if I could type, this would be so much better, of the components of your project, team project, that this person contributed to. So tell me what they contributed. That's sort of bad language, bad English. Sorry, grammar was never my strong suit. But you could ask them literally to say, hey, what did this person contribute? Now, I would actually, if you have these two questions now, I would actually move that one first. Okay, because this encourages them to reflect, before they just go give someone a mark. Well, let me actually think, what did they do? And you can, ask them things like that. Another one I often do, and I warn students of this ahead of time, is I might do a multiple choice, and I might say something like, this teammate, just to give you a sense here, this teammate, ... was a pleasure to work with and contributed a lot, maybe. Was okay to work with, and did contribute at least some. And then you might have the dreaded, and this is what you want students to know, that they could get put in this category, was a problem, was more of a problem to work with than a contributing team member. Sort of a does not play well with others kind of option. But when you kind of lay it out like this and you let students know that, and you let them know that you can see, if they are continually being rated as a problem, when I do the grading, I often use something like this, and I punish people who end up getting 3s. But again, different approaches to receiving a final grade, and you can decide which kind of approach you want. Okay, so this is just an example of 3 questions. And so now I would be asked to answer these 3 questions for each of the teammates that I worked with. Okay, and so now from here, we just say, okay, do we also want to do some metacognitive stuff? Do we want to get this person thinking about their own contribution? Maybe we just flip this off and say, no, we don't care about that. We just want them to assess their peers. Or maybe we say, no, we also want them to assess themselves. And then by default, they will be asked to answer these same questions about themselves. What do you think of yourself as a teammate? Now, we want to note, sometimes when people go into this metacognitive realm, they want to change the questions. They want to literally make it more reflective. And so you can, if you want, uncheck that. So don't use the group assessments, and instead create novel assessments that you only asked when you're assessing yourself. So you're asked these questions when you're assessing everybody else, and then other questions when you're assessing yourself. Okay, so just to know that functionality is out there, I'm going to go back to saying no, use the group questions, and so they're there. And then show the self-assessment before the group member assessment. So this is when I'm now logging in to see what other people thought of me. If I click this, then I'm also going to see what I thought of me. I'm going to see that self-assessment, and then I'm going to see what my group mates thought. Okay, or you can say, no, just show me what my group mates have. Okay, so that's the flexibility in terms of the actual process of assessing peers. And the real question is, do you see this just as a process for generating a grade in the end, or do you want to use this as an opportunity to kind of provoke certain kinds of thinking, metacognitive analyses and stuff, and give students practice with that? That's up to you. You're the experts. So we're just trying to make the tool able to do what you want to do. All right, cool. So that's all set up in terms of the questions they're going to ask, and then we just move on. There's 2 ways to move on. One is just to continue on the bottom here, which I'll do, and that brings us to the next manage groups. And this is just, well, okay, tell me who's in what team. I have to know that in order to set this up. And there's different ways of doing that. So one of them is to import the cases. So if you already have your teams set up in your learning management system, you can just import the existing teams, and that'll be it, and you're done. Or you can use peerScholar to actually create the teams in some way. So you can use these create groups, and now you have an option to sort of manually put students into groups, allow them to join groups themselves. This doesn't really make sense with the group member assessment because they're sort of already in teams, right? The notion is they already did something as a team. So the most common thing you do is either recreate those teams in peerScholar manually, which you might do if you have a small class. If you just had 5 groups of 3 students, you could just manually set them up here again. Or more likely, you're going to import the groups from the learning management system. Okay, and that's fairly straightforward process to do. I'm going to edit for a second because I have a call. No, I don't have to do that one. No, forget the call. Okay, except I have to make it shut up. There. Okay. All right, so we've built the activity for assessing each other. We've told it who's in what group, and then so we can continue from here. And because we haven't got the group set up, I'm just going to click on here for now. But it wants us to set up the groups, and anyway, so I'm going to click here. So let's imagine we did that. We imported the groups, we got them set up, we have the activity set up, and then now we're really getting to the point of the WebPA grading. Okay, and so whenever you're grading something in peerScholar, there's different ways you can generate a grade. So first of all, there's 3 big categories of ways. You can just give students participation if they completed certain things. You can have an instructor or a TA look at the work and apply grades. But with the WebPA approach, you're really in this middle place where you want to actually use the ratings that peers provided, and you want to generate a grade based on those, right? And so that we would click on the peer ratings. Now, we have existing ways of doing this, but it's just based on averages or various other stats or whatever you want of the actual ratings you asked them about. So we could, for example, remember we asked them to give a grade out of 10. We could find, and this is I think again the most WebPA sort of related, we could find the average marks, say, that people gave me. What did my teammates give me out of 10? And that could be my mark. So that's set. But the WebPA approach is a little different. And so what you will see, this is the IOU. Right now we have these 2, and you'll have as many as, like, if you create questions that can be turned into a numerical answer, it'll appear on this list, and you can use those. So that list will grow depending on how many questions you ask that have numerical answers. But on the bottom of this list will be something that says the WebPA approach, something like that, and it will appear very shortly within peerScholar. Again, I want to say a week as the outside. It could be quicker than a week. And so then you would just say, yes, I want to generate it, and you would click on, it'll look like this, but you'll click on a box for the WebPA approach. And then it will take those ratings and it will turn those into the grade just as WebPA did it. Okay, and if you're curious about that, you can very easily online find. I know one of these websites, one of these tabs I have on the top is that WebPA approach, but you can find the breakdown of how they do it. Okay, so let me step back a little bit here just for a second and say that's how you do it. That's how you set up the rating system, and you have a little bit of richness that you probably didn't have available in WebPA. You can use that or not, and this is how you generate it into a grade. And so I'm going to say finish for all this, because I want to show you one other thing here. Okay, so you have it all set up. The way peerScholar works is as soon as you set it up, it's ready to go. Okay, it's ready for students to come in, although you're going to have to show it, right? You have to show the activity to students. And then if students came, clicked into it, they would see that's there, and they could click in and they could start assessing their peers. If you want more control over that, you can close this and you can wait until you want it to be available to them, and then you can open it and it becomes available to them. Okay, so that's all pretty straightforward. All right, and so now just the last thing I want to show you in this video. I'm going to go back to the activities, and I'm going to in fact create a new one. And I'm going to create one of these two. So just to give you the bigger sense, the idea here is that yes, I want students to do that group member evaluation, just like we described, but I want it to be part of the bigger peerScholar process. So I'm going to have students create something. I'm going to then have them give feedback to their peers, again, which can happen in teams, and I'm then going to have them see and reflect on that feedback they receive. So those 3 steps. But somewhere along the way, I also want them to assess their teammates. I'm not going to go into this in detail because I'm hoping you're having a sense of how to create a peerScholar activity. But if I pick one of these and create it, now the difference is just this. When we go to build the activity, here's what I just showed you. Okay, everything about the group member assessment. And here's the other 3 steps. So any of these steps you would use to define how you want these steps to happen, right? The create, the assess, the reflect phase, which is sort of a different topic. Happy to talk about that. But then you say, oh, and along the way, I want them to do group member assessments. Here, it's everything you saw except this part, okay? This part is asking you, when do you want them to do that group member assessment? And you have choices here. So it could be do the create phase, so maybe right after they create their team project and submit it, that's when you want them to assess their teammates. Maybe it's after the assess phase, maybe it's after the reflect phase. So now the group member assessment becomes integrated with the more general peerScholar activity, and it works that way. So I don't want to overcomplicate that. I just want you to know that that's an option. And please also know that if you're going through this and you're feeling at all uncomfortable or whatever, steve@peerscholar.com. Reach out and say, hey, saw your video, trying to do it. Can we spend a couple minutes just to take a look at what I'm doing and seeing if everything makes sense? 100%. No problem. I would love to do that for you. Okay. One final thing in this context. I'm going to go to videos.peerscholar.com. And I hope you've seen some of these videos before. These are videos that we've created to help students as they go through peerScholar. And so some of them, the feedback videos, help them with this process of giving feedback to peers and learning from feedback they receive. Feel free to check those out at any point if you haven't. These are generally embedded right in peerScholar. But when you're doing teamwork, I want you to also be aware that we've created videos to help students understand the challenges of teamwork and to give them some strategies that help them do it well. And so check out these videos. You can take a look at them anytime. You can copy and paste those URLs, put them right in there. So these videos, will help your students in a teamwork project context. Well, that's what they're there for. And we would love for you to use them. All right. That's it. I'm no good at short videos. I always go on a little bit more. I'm sorry about that. But I hope that gives you a sense. And again, steve@peerscholar.com. Please do not hesitate to reach out at any time. Thank you from Canada. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.